Welcome everyone, Costin here with the discussion about Great King Suppiluliuma, the last great hope of Hatti, because things aren't looking too good for them at the very start of the game. This is supposed to be a very hard start, but there are many things you can do over here in this particular campaign to make the situation work in your favor. One of the things I would firmly recommend that you do if you are starting this particular campaign is, well, start with all the features unlocked. Because getting that kind of good start very quickly is going to benefit you quite a bit. You will want to get the god dedication slot in terms of royal decrees because you will want to get a second god as quickly as possible. There's multiple benefits behind that, and hell, I might do an entire video on the best gods for each particular faction in the game, but you do start with Arena as your worship. You get food, happiness, and recruitment cost reduction, as well as resource from sacking, resource from looting and occupying, and a devoted general gets armor, charge bonus, and upkeep for his army. So some very solid benefits, not necessarily the very best. Suppiluliuma himself does have a benefit to increase his replenishment by up to 70% for one turn. And if you let it wind up for 5 turns, you do increase your workforce by 10 in all provinces. So either you're able to recover your armies from an enormously difficult battle, or you can get a strong passive effect that does give you some very solid tangible benefits in terms of growing your settlements. Now, in terms of unique buildings, this is kind of the part where I'm not really sold on Suppiluliuma's benefits. Yes, you do have the refugee center for workforce growth, food income, and happiness, but other things like garrison quarters and militia gathering post, not especially great. I understand the intent behind it. They want to play that defensive playstyle, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't really think it works in a lot of ways. In terms of Ancient Legacy, you want to go with the Benevolent over here as opposed to the Overseer. The reason for this is that the Overseer does give you a bunch of princes that have unique titles and benefits and increased relations with your vassals, but the Benevolent... yeah, so so the Overseer is not really worth it compared to the Benevolent. The Benevolent gives you some very, very substantial benefits, including the fact that you will be able to get instant construction. Now, there are a couple of things that you will want to do over here from the very, very start of your campaign. First and foremost, do recruit another general and also go into the court over here and assign that general. You cannot afford to claim the position because we have no gold, unfortunately, but you will want to start getting another general. You do start as king with quote-unquote all of the benefits of that, but similarly, you are going to struggle in certain ways. You can and probably should be incentivized to go for the High Judge and also the High Commander over here to increase your relationship over there and start getting things there. You do gain more regard from with intrigues in your campaign over here, which obviously can be quite a very beneficial situation over there. So you do want to gossip with these two because the High Judge can give you some very solid benefits if you're playing a Hittite campaign. Obviously, the lack of starting gold is going to be a bit of a problem. I'm not going to lie on that. Maybe a bit more than a bit of a problem. So you will need to find a way to make up for it. Thankfully, there are some possibilities that you could go for, but you're probably going to struggle to get all the gold that you need. There is a gold mine that is available early on, but it is held by a faction that, well, let's just simply say it is going to cause some issues. So most likely you probably want to trade some of your stone for that particular gold, and maybe even some of your bronze. Because while, yes, you will suffer for the lack of it, trust me, it is well worth getting that gold as quickly as possible over here in this campaign, even if you have to trade a lot of your stone. You can always get more stone later on, but you only have one opportunity early on in your campaign. Is it important to get the gold? Is it important to start with all of this? Sort of. Like, you can handle these two battles over here very quickly and effectively if you know how to play your cards right. But you just got to be mindful of the consequences that will exist for, you know, trying to fight these kind of battles one after another. It can be tricky, but yeah, if you just get one of those elite units, you will be able to handle things just fine and eliminate the Casca invaders. Very importantly here, very importantly here is the fact that once you eliminate these guys, you're actually going to be in a significantly better position, and then you can start doing some recruitment. One of the things that you will certainly feel in this campaign is going to be the lack of freaking archers. So you might want to actually cancel these buildings and start getting those archers from the very beginning of your campaign, even if it does take multiple turns. You're going to face rebellions, you're going to face a lot of things. Here's the thing though about Suppiluliuma to actually understand though. It is a harsh start, undeniably, but very crucially, once you do get the ball rolling, you do have an enormous level of power that other factions just do not have. And also, by the way, I'd probably recommend going for the axe as opposed to the spear, because while the influence can be good, though, you might want to keep the spear early on, because, yeah, you're lacking in influence here from the very beginning of your campaign. So just bear that aspect in mind. Right there. Unfortunately, there's not many factions that actually like you for a number of reasons. Can't imagine why. Can't imagine why they wouldn't like you. You do have one vassal, and honestly, I would probably recommend fleecing them for all they're worth, if you can. Just keep in mind that there are certainly going to be limits in terms of this, and there's only so much you can do really with these guys in your campaign. Recommended getting some of that bronze, because one of the issues you're actually going to face is going to be a lack of bronze in your campaign. Now, remember that gratitude action that I talked? Yes, we adopt them into the dynasty. The reason we adopt them into the dynasty is because unless you're planning on dying, it shouldn't necessarily be too big of a problem. And it can be something that various factions do value immensely, giving you some kind of benefit that you can start working with over here from the very beginning of your campaign. Just keep in mind the downsides, the real downsides that are absolutely going to exist in this situation when you are doing something like this. Keep all of that in mind. What you will want to do, however, is get access to that gold mine. But first, we're going to go to the Benevolent, and we're going to get that instant construction availability over here and use that particular token so we can actually start getting ourselves some actual archers. Because again, we will need them. This isn't a joke. This is not an exaggeration on my part. You do need a lot of these units in order to get started over here at Suppiluliuma, and make sure you also get rid of that particular building. It might be worth trading some of that bronze that you do start with for some stone, because yeah, it might be useful to keep it early on, but well, don't make necessarily that mistake. Like, it's a choice, right? Is it so important that you get the temples? Maybe, maybe not. Though, keep in mind, there are other factions that you can go for as opposed to the ones you're already working with. So, for instance, you can get bronze from one faction and in exchange for stone, and then trade that bronze, as I'm doing over here, for another faction, and potentially getting a better deal in return. So just one aspect that's worth pointing out over there. Because you do want to, because one of the things to understand, economic outposts at the very least are going to be a fairly substantial benefit that you can absolutely use during the course of your campaign. And if you're doing what I just did, you might want to wait a bit on increasing your workforce, because you're not necessarily going to have the money from the very beginning in order to work with that. So second turn, your objective will be to get that gold mine. So your campaign path from the very beginning, and always recommend you disable actions over here from the camera. Just forgot there for a moment. Second turn, what you're going to want to do over here is take that particular settlement. There are times when your vassals will give you various units that you can use. This is one of those times. As long as you have enough money to survive one turn, it's not necessarily too important that you rush into the middle of danger. But, you know, you do have those 2 court actions that you can use, and you can always take a ruling in order to get some benefits over here in your campaign. So in this case, I'm just going to get that workforce growth over here. And it does give you those kind of choices in your campaign that you otherwise would be lacking. It is worth it to use all of the gratitude that you have early on, because you are going to need a couple of things in order to really make this situation work. Not all of them are worth worrying about here, but we can, for instance, claim that particular position of High Commander and get some extra units over there that we can then recruit. And also we can, we're gonna go for that, and also get those kind of discounts that we can work with. Though it will be you will get a much better result if you do actually fight the battles manually, as opposed to what I just did over there. Just flat out simple as that. And once you do start gaining control over your core territory, things will start getting better. Like once you get some economic buildings up there, once you do take control of your initial province, that's really the thing. Like when you talk about a hard start, I don't think a hard start is having a hard turn 1. You do certainly have 2 battles, but they're not necessarily the most difficult either in the game. Or really, you only have 1 battle with the potential of a second one. So, you know, just because, again, you have 1 hard battle or 2 hard battles followed up by a settlement battle like this, again, does not make it the most excruciating thing. You just gotta be careful, pick your fights over here, pick your selection. You can also ambush the enemy army. Like one of the things, since you do start with an outpost over there, one of the things that would be available in your campaign would be to deal with the initial army and then set up an ambush right next to the outpost. The AI is kind of going to try and hit you hard. Like, by the way, also this particular Arzarv, I'm just gonna say it, you are probably gonna have to fight some of these battles manually. Just keep that in mind. And we can also start an embezzle plot over here in order to start getting some money, because we are going to need that particular situation. Yeah, so 27%. So we can start working on various plots over here in order to increase their chances of success. Okay. That's enough for the initial situation. What do you want to do in the long term? Well, one of the things that's actually going to be quite important is getting access to all the various wonderful units that Hatti does have. Though keep in mind, one of the things that Hatti does have compared to other factions is their ability to start recruiting good infantry from the very start. Heavy infantry is less important than it was before, but it's still a critical aspect in your campaign, because it takes far less damage, even with lethality, and also just will take far less damage in battles in general, and potentially auto-resolve, though it depends on what you're dealing with. Specifically, these Axemen, though, also have a good amount of melee lethality, so they will certainly punch way above their weight. And that's your initial recruitment option. Honestly, you might want to build entire stacks of these guys, though given how lethality works, you may want to go for other units like ranged as well. Some people are complaining about like range lethality being too hard. I don't know, I've gone up against entire armies of archers and easily won against them. You might complain about the AI situation. I don't think it's the AI. It's just the thing is, range units can be good, but they do need to set up, they do need to do fire, they do need to continue to fire, they have to worry about terrain line of sight. So them having the ability of potentially doing a lot of damage when they're hitting an enemy, yeah, it's just a benefit there, but there's a lot of ways of counteracting it. I'm talking here from a campaign perspective, not a multiplayer perspective. If people are complaining about multiplayer balancing in this game, fair enough, though I will say, yeah, that's been a consistent problem in Troy and Pharaoh. And also, I am sick and tired of the multiplayer cabal foretold we're ruining every fucking thing in single player because they think like, oh, our game is the most important. Yeah, I would really like to have a different balancing for both multiplayer and campaign because there's different ways you play those very, very differently. So yeah, I'm fine with lethality as it is. You also do have access to some really powerful chariots, some of the best chariots in the game, though at least from a melee standpoint, though they may have lost the title of best chariots in the game compared to, say, the Mesopotamian chariots, but still they'd give them a run for their money. In terms of unique units, you do have some really heavy infantry available, medium heavy infantry that is really good. Expensive though, and you're certainly going to struggle on an economic standpoint. Now, what is your long-term goal? Well, one of the things you gotta be concerned about is factions over here coming in this corner to potentially take out your vassal. So you want to actually sort out this territory between yourself and your vassal. Maybe, you know, take some of this territory, give it to your vassal, get, you know, the bronze here. Like, actually, the territory your vassal has is kind of the territory you'd want to have yourself. But there are territories that you do have access to. One of the things that's going to be crucial, and one of the reasons you're going to want to fight a lot of battles in your campaign, is going to do with the Civil War. It is very doable to avoid the Civil War in general. Kurunta is going to be the main threat you're going to be dealing with in this campaign in terms of the Civil War threat. So just keep that in mind, keep fighting battles, conquering territory. But of course, because you do want to unite your initial province, you're going to have to deal with this faction. But once you do deal with them, you are going to have a pretty secure base of operations that you can work with to really deal with a whole bunch of factions and unite Hatti. Kurunta, he won't necessarily declare war on you unless you can spark a civil war, so just stay ahead of him in terms of legitimacy. Iolus, who starts to the south, may be a problem, undeniably so, but it is something you can, again, deal with using various methods. And it's certainly good to be the king from the very beginning of your campaign. Undeniably so. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Again, 5 battles, and rely on the post-battle loot to keep you going for that. You do have more replenishment than any other faction in the game from the very start of it. So just take these guys out, take the province here. You should be secure enough in the east, especially if you're going to do the following. Like, if you really want to secure yourself from, you know, provocation. So keep in mind, the AI is a sneaky little bastard in quite a lot of ways. But if you want to avoid any kind of provocations, like barter agreements for 10 turns can prevent wars from happening or random declarations of war. Because of your kind of central position over here in Anatolia, it is very possible for a lot of factions to declare war on you. You also have Cascaraders and, well, basically the endgame Crisis armies, or the Crisis army, spawning to the north of you. So that's why you get so many defensive benefits. But you don't want to sit on your ass and play defensive in a campaign. It's the worst way to do it. You want to be proactive. You want to go out there, take that gold mine, deal with this territory, or maybe get a peace agreement and don't even go east in general. One of the ways to secure a peace agreement with these guys would be, yes, take one of their territories, take their gold mine, take another territory here, and then force them to accept a peace agreement, maybe with a non-aggression pact, while selling that territory to them back. It would work quite well. And from there on, it's really up to you. Costin, signing out.